Hello ladies and gentlemen, Gabester here. This is the Normal and Heroic DPS guide for Tectus. And doing DPS on this fight is mostly a matter of survival. There are a lot of mechanics that are dangerous to DPS players, particularly ranged DPS. And then beyond that, you also need to properly manage your DPS burst capabilities, your cooldowns, so that you're attacking for as much damage as possible at certain points in the fight. And the other parts of the fight, your damage burst does not actually matter too much. Now the first thing to understand is that Tectus himself, along with the two shards that you'll see in a moment, cannot be killed unless they are at full energy and are casting their Tectonic Upheaval ability, which is a massive raid-wide damage slam ability. Because of this, once a creature that you're attacking and trying to kill has reached 0 health, but it's not at full energy yet, you can freely do damage to other targets because the 0 health creature, once it does reach 100 energy, will die. So this doesn't happen too frequently, but it is just worth noting that doing extra damage to Tectus or a shard that's at 0 health but hasn't died yet is irrelevant. You don't have to do that. Now, once Tectus or one of those shards does get killed at 100 energy and they're casting their ability, they will split. So Tectus will turn into 2 shards of Tectus, which are just lesser versions of Tectus himself that use the same abilities. And similarly, when you kill a shard, it will split into 4 motes of Tectus, which again are even smaller versions of the shards, but always with the same abilities just as before. The difference between Tectus and the shards versus the motes is that the motes can be killed before they reach 100 energy outside of casting Tectonic Upheaval. So once you get to the motes part of the phase, or part of the fight, you can just burn the motes down, and it doesn't matter their energy levels. So there are a couple major abilities that you need to watch for as DPS, again, particularly if you're ranged DPS. The first is cast when Tectus, a shard, or a mote is at 25 energy. So there are a lot of energy levels to watch later in the fight. When they reach 25, they'll cast Earthen Pillar, which targets a random ranged raid member, and it will shoot a large pillar into the air that lasts for quite a long time. The major problem with these pillars is that they, in addition to doing heavy damage if you get hit, they block line of sight and movement. So if you don't carefully position these, you can easily cut off a good chunk of the room and kind of prevent yourself from, going further to one area or the other. So because of that, the best course of action is generally when a Earthen Pillar is about to be cast, close to 25 energy, to move against a wall somewhere on the outside of the room, so that if the Earthen Pillar does target you as a ranged, you will not, be cutting off any part of the room. If you're a DPS that's in melee, however, just a melee DPS, you don't have to worry about it. It will not target you unless there aren't any ranged players alive, which is unlikely. The second major ability, which again mostly focuses on ranged DPS, but melee should be aware of it, is Crystalline Barrage. This is by far the most dangerous ability in the fight, and essentially every 30 seconds, each of the active mobs, so Tectus, shards, or motes will all use it, will cast Crystalline Barrage on a random ranged raid member. This will target that player and chase them with this misty cloud of red stuff that you see. And if you or anyone else touches any of the mist, you'll take very heavy damage every second. It's easily the most potential burst damage outside of Tectonic Upheaval that you can face. So the best method for dealing with these is maybe counterintuitive, but you need to consider the logic behind it. What you might be tempted to do if you get targeted is to simply run backwards, hit the wall that's behind you, and then follow that wall. The reason that this is actually a bad idea is because it will create a path of Crystalline Barrage red mist going from the boss's location, because that's where it originates, all the way to the wall. And this creates a just complete cutoff of that side of the room for everyone else. To get anywhere to that side of the room, they have to go through an existing red Crystalline Barrage path. So the method we found that works much better is if you get targeted as a ranged DPS by Crystalline Barrage, try to run forward slightly if you're really far away until just before the Crystalline Barrage wave is about to hit you, and then make a right or a left and circle around. So essentially, if you think of the boss position where it originated as the center position and the wall behind you as the back position, you want to split those two positions in half and run along a line, either left or right, between those. This will create sort of an L shape, going from the boss and then to the right and the left. And this will give a gap behind that existing path between the path and the wall for other people to pass through if they need to safely. So you're essentially creating space that will allow other ranged DPS players that have to kite or just move around to get where they need to go on one side or the other. So this technique really helped us a lot in this kill and our future kills as well. So the other thing is that because melee cannot be targeted by this ability, they just simply need to be aware of the positioning of themselves so that they don't get hit by the miscellaneous damage when it comes out. So the best thing we found is if you're melee DPS, you're going to have most of your range try to stack up on one side of the boss. So the melee should be on the opposite side of the boss relative to the range, so that when Crystalline Barrage passes from the boss toward the ranged, the melee don't have to move. They're not at risk of touching it. So that's the basic idea for melee DPS, but generally speaking, they should not have to worry too much about these mechanics. The last thing to take note of as a DPS is the basic kill order. Generally speaking, most raids will use the same kill order, which I suggest here. So obviously you start off on Tectus, as is the only valid target. However, while Tectus is active, you will get the occasional ad spawn from outside of the room. This will be picked up by your off tank, and you should switch targets and kill the ad right away rather than getting back on Tectus. The reason for this is that even if Tectus himself lives a little bit longer, it's okay because having him live and heal a little bit is completely acceptable in terms of damage to the raid. You can take longer on that section of the fight because you need your burst damage in later sections, as I talked about at the beginning. So once Tectus dies and you've cleaned up the other ads that might be active, you'll get the 2 shards of Tectus. Your raid will want to focus on 1 shard only, but both shards will be stacked up. So if you can cleave damage, that's great. It will help your raid mitigate some damage. But generally speaking, you want to focus on the 1 shard at a time. Once that first shard dies, you will get 4 motes of Tectus from its body. So you have 1 shard and 4 motes. And this is where you want to blow all your DPS cooldowns that you saved up, because you really need to focus on killing the motes as quickly as possible. If you allow a bunch of motes to stay active for a while, particularly if they reach 100 energy and start casting Tectonic Upheaval, the raid's going to have major difficulty surviving that damage. So this is where raid strategy could differ slightly. Depending on your raid's DPS, you may be asked to AE all the motes down at once, not one at a time rather, but all together. But we found it was much safer to actually kill them off one at a time. So just have 1 DPS assigned to mark the motes that you're killing and kill that single mote, and then switch to the next one and the next one and so on. But as I said, regardless, you want to use your DPS cooldowns, Bloodlust, all that good stuff, because getting through this section where you have the 5 enemies at once is the most difficult aspect of the fight. Keep in mind that when these motes spawn, along with the shards before them, they will use Earthen Pillars when they reach 25 energy, so not too long after they are active. So you really need to watch for those spawns, as well as Crystalline Barrage spawns will occur right away, and try to keep them under control. And if you can get through those 4 motes, then you're left with just the 1 shard, and then you kill him, and then you kill the 4 motes that he leaves behind, but that second round is actually much easier. It's also worth noting that the Berserk timer on this fight is quite long. You have a long time to do the encounter in terms of DPS requirement, so it should be more focus on survival and controlling the Crystalline Barrage primarily and the Pillars secondary. So that should cover it. That's the Normal and Heroic DPS guide for Tectus. As always, thanks for watching, good luck, and see you next time.